Alright, let's see if I've actually figured out the audio for this one. I'm holding the mic just a little bit further away from my mouth this time, because when I was doing the lapel mic, it was a bit of a mess. But anyway, I digress. So, 2022 has had a lot of good films, and I think out of all of the ones that were going to appear, none of them had my attention quite like the Banshees of Inisherin. For starters, I'm just a huge Martin McDonagh fan. I mean, In Bruges is fantastic, Seven Psychopaths is pretty good, and I thought that Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri was just a complete triumph. It was just such a good film, and I totally get why it swept the Oscars that year. It was just, you know, it's a film that I can rewatch now and still get just as much from it from when I watched it the first time. Plus the fact that you were going to see Colin Farrell and Gleeson back on screen together for the first time, as far as I'm aware, since In Bruges. That idea just sounded too good to pass up, really. I mean, why wouldn't you want to go watch this film? There was just so much hype for it. And then if you also factor in the critical reviews, I mean, Mark Kermode gave it 5 stars. I think at the moment it has a 97% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which, yeah, I mean, on that alone, you just think, even if you knew nothing about it, you'd probably be like, damn, 97%? I should probably go watch this film. And yet, oof, I did not like this film. I was really, really disappointed, and I know I'm in the minority saying that because, again, tons of really good reviews for it, but I gotta be honest, I just did not like the film as a whole. I think the problem really is that it comes down to it just being way too depressing. I mean, look, I can get behind a good film that, you know, is a bit more on the depressing side. Like, I really liked Manchester by the Sea and Son of Saul, another example of a film that, yeah, very bleak, but still really, I guess, really well executed in terms of the story that it wanted to tell. But Banshees of Inisherin is just, it doesn't quite tread the same fine line that those films are able to do. After a while, it just felt like all this film is a race to the bottom for how depressed it can make you, and as that happens, any sense of hope or optimism just gets vacuumed out of the film really quickly. So yeah, this is as spoiler free as really I can make it up until this point, but from this point onwards, I just have to go all in and explain exactly why I feel this way about this film. So if you haven't seen it, go, well, you know what? I feel like it's almost worth watching once just to understand what happens with, you know, maybe all the right pieces, but not quite the right script. It's an interesting study, but I digress. We're going to be diving into spoilers now, so consider this your spoiler warning, I guess. So the central conceit of the film, it's about a falling out between two best friends, Porrick, played by Colin Farrell, and Colin, played by Gleeson. And they live on this remote Irish island, Inisherin, and they have this typical routine. They'll go to the pub, spend their day there, talking about whatever has happened in the week or whatever else. And one day, Porrick goes to Colin's house, and he can see him in the window, or through the window rather, and he just doesn't recognize his friend or do anything to acknowledge his presence. So a rather confused Porrick goes off to the local pub, just completely bewildered by what's happened, and eventually he catches up to Colin and he manages to get the truth out of him, which is quite a funny exchange, I'll admit, but what it amounts to is that Colin says that he just doesn't like Porrick anymore, which, of course, if you hear that from your best friend, it's devastating, and that is what starts the film off, really. That is the main dilemma that sets the whole film, the whole events of the film into motion. It's a very funny setup, and it leads to a really interesting philosophical debate where a really drunken Porrick confronts Colin at the pub. Essentially what it boils down to is Porrick trying to make the point that it's more important to be simple and kind to your fellow man as opposed to what Colin wants, which is to be remembered for his achievements. And essentially that is the sort of problem, is that Colin starts to realise, or he seems to believe that he's going to leave Earth without anything to show for it, really. And so he tries to throw himself into writing music and getting it out there. And if that's what the movie was about in its entirety, I probably think it was amazing. It really handles that debate quite well in the beginning, and that debate scene in the pub is really, really well done. Plus, there's just some great humour to be found here, and the performances themselves are phenomenal. The problem is that it doesn't stop there. In fact, it goes to some really, really bleak territory. What happens is that Colin takes a stand and he proclaims in front of everyone to hear that if Porrick doesn't leave him alone, then he will chop off one finger every time he bugs him, essentially. And it sounds absurd, but as the film goes on, Colin ends up being a man of his word, and he removes a finger and throws it at Porrick's door. And it's just, it is a bit absurd, because as the film goes on, as you can probably imagine, the scenario gets worse and more fingers end up getting thrown at Porrick's door. But it's just the kind of problem that could only really happen in a melodrama, because even by Colin's own logic, it doesn't make any sense. He doesn't want to spend time with Porrick anymore so that he can invest his time, or the time that he has left, into his music, and all he wants to do is for Porrick to leave him alone. But already that's a bit of a flawed concept, because it's not like Porrick is there with him every single hour of the day. There is time for both things to work, and that's one thing. But what's really weird is that by removing his fingers, he also removes his ability to play that very same music that he wants to put out there into the world. So it just doesn't really make any sense, and it just keeps getting worse and worse to the point of no return. And to make matters worse, Barry Keoghan's character dies off screen right near the end of the film for seemingly no reason at all, as if to just amplify how depressing it is in the film's climax. I mean, and it's such a shame, because his character is sort of this dim-witted son of the local policeman, but he's kind of harmless and almost endearing to a certain extent. He is really the only youthful person on the island, and to have him get killed really unceremoniously towards the end, it just doesn't leave you with the best feeling in the pit of your stomach, if I'm being honest. I think I can appreciate a film that has a bleak ending if it's trying to say something, if there's a genuine point that's trying to be made. But with the Banshees of Inisherin, all of this drama is just there for the sake of there being drama. I don't really feel like there was any tangible point beyond that initial debate about the two opposing philosophies of Colin and Porrick, but that dies out about halfway through the film. So what you're left with is just this, another bleak Irish tale. As always, I'll be interested to see what Martin McDonagh does next, but Banshees of Inisherin is just not for me.